Okay, so I'm no concrete expert, don't claim to be one, but have laid, as you can see, quite a bit of concrete around here, making steps and even doing some elevation changes and some ramps. So it's a very sloppy work site right now. But, and I've laid basement steps before, a couple times actually. Anyways, my point is, I'm not an expert. I've done it several dozen times, and I've poured probably 1,000 bags of concrete, 2,000 bags of concrete maybe. That being said, what I do is I use the 60 pound, although if you can get to 80 pounds, they're better, of the high strength concrete mix. You can get it from Home Depot. I think Sakrete makes it. Good product. That's what you see here on the base. Before I do any of that, though, I lay down either paver base, or if I can get it, I get, where's that bag? There it is. I'll go ahead and get this sand mix, which you can use for pavers as well, but it solidifies real nicely and it compacts when it gets wet, almost like concrete would. So I lay a base of that down, I tamp it real good, and I let it set up overnight and let a little moisture hit it. And when you come back out, it feels hard, but if you dig your heel in, you'll scoop a little piece out of it. But if you leave it undisturbed, it acts as a very good base if tamped and then allowed a little bit of moisture. Then I put the Sakrete down. I do about half the amount of bags they recommend for 2 inches. And I go ahead and I get it in there, spread it out. You can see I'm doing this on a little bit of a ramp. So it has to be a little thicker mix when you do that. And then what I'm going to do is I walk all over it after I spread it to compact it just a little bit. I want there to be some opportunity for water to get in there. And I'm doing a dry pour here. So I'm going to sprinkle water on this several times throughout the next couple of days, a dozen times over the next couple of days, every 3 or 4 hours. And the last thing I do then is I sweep it. If it's especially on a ramp, I don't care about anything except that it's a nice linear line, meaning there's no change in slope unless it's purposeful. But in this case, it just needs to be a linear slope at about 4 degrees, which is 4 times as much as you need for water to get going. But I didn't have the distance to spread it out, so that's what I did. It's mostly to get that big boy up closer to the back of the shed and still leave a place where I can sit and hang out by my fire pit. The last thing I do is I grab mortar mix type S. You can see the bag there, and you're gonna watch me do the final step of this. Mortar has no pebbles in it or no gravel like concrete does. That's typically you use a magnesium or aluminum concrete float, which mine is over there. That pulls water to the top, which settles the pebbles, and the rocks beneath the surface, which is where you end up with a nice smooth top. Mortar has nothing except for the powder, and so I use that to make sure, because I'm not very good at concrete, that I have a nice smooth top. And then I'll sweep the finish so I get a little groove, and I'll sweep this way, so when I get a little traction as I pull things up it. So I'm going to place this here and kind of show you what I do. 1 second. Don't really have anywhere to put this motherfucker. 1 second. That should be good. We will find out. I would normally use a rake upside down for this. I don't want to pull too many rocks to the top. That defeats the whole point of what I'm doing. The shovel kind of does that. However, like I told you before, the float you use will pull moisture to the top. And so a couple rocks isn't a big deal. I'm also a lazy bastard. I don't feel like turning around and grabbing it from right there. So, but anyways, I just want to get it spread pretty evenly. Because concrete, even though I'm pouring a dry pour, I'm going to naturally float to the bottom. So I start my bottom about if I'm doing a 2-inch pour, I'll start the bottom at about 1 inch and 5/8, inch and a half, knowing things will float down this way. So I'm going to pull up at the end and start my top a little higher because that's where I'm going to meet my walkway anyways. And I can always grind that down if it's a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch high. But it's very difficult to pour 1/8 of an inch of concrete. So if you end up low, down at the bottom, you're kind of fucked. Especially if you have the little experience that, if you're watching this video, most likely do, and I definitely do. So, something to keep in mind. Now I'm just going to do this. I'm not trying to start it perfect, because I'm going to have to float it. You're not going to just dry pour a perfect pour of concrete. You need to put just a little effort in at the end to float it correctly and make sure that you've got time to do that. When you're dry pouring, I do it in between every other mist. I find that to be effective enough for what I'm looking to achieve, which is just a walkway that's safe, sturdy, and can support up to about 1,000 pounds. If you're supporting more than that, or you've got trucks or cars driving on it, you're going to need a totally different method. But my objective is to do things as quickly, but also as good as possible, creating value. It's not going to be the best job for every circumstance, but I hope that to achieve through some trial and error and some learning, the best possible circumstance for my situation. Which I believe, well, I know I'm getting better at, but I'm not perfect at yet. Just flick it up. And that's pretty much it. We'll see how well that recorded, but you can see the final product before. You can see quite a few rocks there at the top, but like I said, that's okay. I'm going to even out that very top area. You can't quite see, it's a little lump there. I also have mine sloping from the right to left as well as down. So I want it to come down and go this way. All right, more to come. I'll record some final products and some do's and don'ts based on mistakes I've made, which there will be plenty of. All right, have a good day.